The story of Filipino English did not begin in a classroom. It began in the heat of the islands, under the bright sun, in a world that was changing faster than anyone expected. At first, no one saw anything special in the way Filipinos spoke English. Some people even laughed. Some said it sounded funny. Some said it was different. But nobody expected what would come next. Because today, the English that once made people laugh is now the English the world listens to. And this is the story of how that happened. It began more than 100 years ago, when the Philippines was introduced to English inside wooden classrooms, with chalkboards, old books, and teachers who traveled across the ocean. The children were curious. They looked at the words on the page like they were treasures from another world. But something powerful happened. The children did not just learn English. They shaped it, molded it, transformed it, and gave it a soul that did not exist before. Their English carried the rhythm of the islands, the softness of their kindness, the warmth of their smiles, and the bravery of their history. Soon, millions of Filipinos grew up speaking English, not as a second language, but as a language that lived beside their hearts. They spoke not to impress anyone, but to survive, to work, to dream, to reach for something bigger. But the world was not kind at first. When Filipinos used English, people from other countries sometimes smirked, raised their eyebrows, or whispered, "Why do they talk like that? Why do they sound different? That accent is funny." Some Filipinos felt embarrassed, some felt shy. Some tried to copy other accents just to sound acceptable. But a new generation was rising, one that did not care about copying anyone. A generation that said, "This is who we are, this is how we speak, and this is enough." With every year, Filipino English became clearer, warmer, and more global. And soon, something started happening. Something nobody expected. The world began calling. First came the call centers. The companies searched across the world for a voice that was friendly, calm, respectful, patient, and easy to understand. They searched in many countries, but one group stood out: Filipinos. Because Filipino English was not cold, it was not sharp, it did not rush, it did not sound angry. It sounded human, and people loved it. Suddenly, the same accent people once laughed at became the most trusted voice of customer service. People from America, Canada, Australia, and Europe picked up their phones every day and heard a Filipino voice, solving their problems and calming their stress. At first, they did not know, but later, they began to ask, "Are you Filipino? Your English is so clear." And for the first time, the world said those words with admiration, not mockery. Then came something even bigger: teachers. Filipino teachers traveled to different countries: Japan, South Korea, China, Thailand, and many more, carrying not only English lessons, but hope. In small classrooms, in tall buildings, in busy cities, Filipino English spread like a gentle wave. Children from different parts of the world learned English from Filipino voices. Some learned their first English words from a Filipino. Some learned their grammar from a Filipino. Some learned confidence from a Filipino. And one day, parents from other countries said, "We want Filipino teachers because they teach with heart." From one island to another, one country to another, Filipino English began touching the world. But that was still only the beginning, because something even more surprising was coming: the internet. When YouTube exploded, something magical happened. Filipinos started posting videos, vlogs, gaming, comedy, song covers, reaction videos, documentaries, lifestyle diaries. They did not try to sound American. They did not try to sound British. They simply spoke the way they always spoke, and the world listened. People from other countries commented, "I love your English. You're so easy to understand. Your accent is so calming. Why does this sound nicer than the English I hear every day?" Filipino English, once mocked, was becoming the new definition of clarity. It didn't stop there. Nurses in Europe spoke to their patients in Filipino English. Engineers in the Middle East gave presentations in Filipino English. Pilots in the Philippines made announcements in Filipino English that people globally praised online. And foreign tourists who visited Manila, Cebu, and Davao said, "Why is everyone here so good at English?" But the true turning point came when global companies, big brands, tech giants, and international firms began hiring Filipinos not just for customer service, but for leadership positions. They didn't care if your accent was not American. They didn't care if your pronunciation was not British. They cared about clarity. They cared about kindness. They cared about professionalism, and nobody delivered these better than Filipinos. Suddenly, Filipino English became a gold standard for neutral, understandable, friendly English. Not American, not British, not Australian. Filipino English. Then came the greatest twist of all. People from other countries started trying to speak like Filipinos. Yes, people who once called the accent funny were now copying it. Some actors imitated it for roles. Some students tried speaking like their Filipino teachers. Some companies asked voice talents to use a gentle Filipino style because customers preferred it. The world's relationship with English was changing, and Filipinos were part of that change. Today, when a foreigner says, "Mabuhay," there is always a Filipino who taught them. When a student from Japan says, "Teacher, thank you po," you know where they learned it. When a Korean child says "ate" or "kuya" to a Filipino tutor, the culture has already crossed borders. Filipino English is no longer a joke, it is a bridge that connects millions of people. And still, the journey continues. But to truly understand why Filipino English became so powerful, you need to understand the Filipino heart. Filipino English is not just words from another country. It carries hospitality, it carries respect. It carries gentleness, it carries empathy. When a Filipino speaks, you hear sincerity. When a Filipino teaches, you feel patience. When a Filipino explains, you understand clearly. That is why call centers love them. That is why international schools hire them. That is why global companies trust them. That is why the world listens. Because Filipino English is not just a style, it is a feeling. And feelings are stronger than grammar, stronger than accents, stronger than rules in a textbook. Filipino English lives in the smiles, the po, the opo, the soft laugh at the end of a sentence, the warm tone that makes even bad news sound less painful. It is English with a heart. There was once a Filipino student named Mira. She lived in a small town, far from the city, where the rain came often and the air smelled like the sea. She grew up watching American movies and reading English books from the school library. In school, she answered recitations in clear English, but her classmates teased her sometimes. "Why do you talk like that? You sound funny." "That's not how Americans talk." She felt embarrassed. She tried to change her voice. She practiced alone at night, trying to copy other accents. But no matter how hard she tried, her Filipino rhythm was always there. Years later, she became a teacher in Japan. Her students listened to her English with bright eyes. They copied her slowly, carefully, respectfully. One day, a Japanese mother approached her. "Teacher Mira," she said, "my son speaks English better because of you. Your voice is very clear, very gentle. He is not afraid to learn." Mira felt something rise inside her, a realization. The accent she once tried to hide was the accent the world appreciated. And at that moment, she learned something many Filipinos eventually understand. You don't have to change your voice for your voice to change the world. But Mira's story is not the only one. There was Alex, a young call center agent from Quezon City. He grew up speaking English with his cousins, laughing, joking, singing karaoke. But when he applied for global companies, he felt nervous. What if they don't like the way I speak? What if I'm not good enough? What if my accent isn't perfect? But on his first call, something powerful happened. An American customer said, "Wow, you explain things so clearly. I wish people in my country talked like you." And for a moment, Alex felt his chest tighten, not with fear, but with pride. Then came the next call, another compliment and another, and another. Soon, Alex became a team leader. His foreign bosses trusted him, his customers respected him. Not because he tried to sound American, but because he sounded Filipino. Then there was Lila, a nurse in the UK. Her English was calm and soft, carrying the kind of kindness that can heal the soul. One night, she cared for an elderly patient who was scared and in pain. She held his hand gently and said, "You will be okay, sir. I am here." The man looked at her and smiled weakly. "Your voice," he whispered. "It makes me feel safe. Thank you." In that moment, Lila realized something. Filipino English does not just communicate. It comforts, it heals, it gives hope. These stories, Mira, Alex, Lila, are not unique. There are millions more. Because Filipino English is not just spoken in classrooms or offices. It is spoken in airports, in hospitals, in ships, in hotels, in boardrooms, in online classes, in videos watched by millions. The world hears it every single day, and slowly, the world has changed the way it sees Filipino English. Before, funny, weird, different. Today, clear, professional, neutral, trustworthy, beautiful. The same accent people once laughed at is now the accent that helps run the world's biggest companies. The same accent once ignored is now the accent of global teachers. The same accent once looked down on is now the accent foreigners try to copy. This is not an accident. This is the result of a century of learning, teaching, working, and reaching across borders. Today, Filipino English is not just accepted. It is respected, celebrated, admired, and the journey is far from over. Because Filipino English continues to evolve. It continues to grow. It continues to inspire. When Filipinos speak English, they do not erase who they are. They bring their culture into every sentence, their warmth into every conversation, their respect into every interaction. Inside every po and opo is humility. Inside every soft tone is kindness. Inside every clear explanation is intelligence. Inside every Filipino voice is a story of a people who survived colonization, rebuilt after war, endured storms, fought poverty, crossed oceans, and still kept smiling. Filipino English is not just a language. It is proof that Filipinos rise again and again, no matter what the world says. And that is why the world is now listening. Not because Filipinos tried to sound like someone else, but because they sounded like themselves. This accent, this tone, this rhythm is no longer funny. It is global, it is respected, it is powerful, it is Filipino English, and the world speaks it now.